The morning sun cast long shadows across the compound in Kandahar, as Hospital Corpsman Second Class Marcus Chen finished his equipment check. His medical bag contained everything a Navy SEAL team might need in the field: tourniquets, morphine, bandages, and the steady hands that had saved more lives than anyone cared to count. The other members of SEAL Team 7 had come to trust Marcus completely during their 6-month deployment. His calm demeanor under fire had earned him the nickname Zen among the operators. Commander Jake Morrison watched Marcus from across the briefing room, noting the way the corpsman's movements were precise and methodical. In the 18 months they had worked together, Morrison had never seen Marcus lose his composure. Not even when they had walked into that ambush outside Helmand Province 3 weeks ago. While bullets flew overhead, Marcus had crawled 20 meters under enemy fire to reach Petty Officer Rodriguez, who had taken shrapnel to his leg. The corpsman had worked silently, his hands steady as he applied pressure to the wound and administered pain medication, all while the rest of the team returned fire. The mission briefing began at 0800 hours sharp. Intelligence had identified a high-value target hiding in a compound approximately 15 kilometers northeast of their current position. The target was believed to be coordinating attacks against coalition forces throughout the region. The operation would require a night insertion via helicopter, followed by a 2-kilometer patrol through hostile territory. Morrison studied the satellite images spread across the table, noting the multiple entry points and potential extraction routes. Marcus listened intently as Morrison outlined the medical considerations for the mission. The nearest medical evacuation point would be 45 minutes away by helicopter, assuming clear weather conditions. Any serious injuries would need to be stabilized in the field for an extended period. Marcus nodded, running through his mental checklist of medications and equipment. He had performed this same routine hundreds of times, but each mission brought its own unique challenges. Petty Officer First Class David Tank Williams, the team's breacher, slapped Marcus on the back as they prepared to move to the helicopter landing zone. Tank had been with the teams for 8 years and had worked with dozens of corpsmen during his career. He often told new operators that Marcus was the best medic he had ever served alongside. The corpsman's ability to remain calm under pressure had impressed even the most seasoned veterans on the team. As they approached the helicopter, Marcus felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Each member of the team was depending on him to keep them alive if things went wrong. He had trained for years to prepare for these moments, studying battlefield medicine at the Navy's Hospital Corps School in Great Lakes, Illinois, followed by additional training at the Special Operations Combat Medic course in North Carolina. The training had been intense, covering everything from basic trauma care to advanced surgical procedures that could be performed in the field. The helicopter lifted off into the darkness, and Marcus closed his eyes, focusing on his breathing. He had developed this meditation technique during his early days with the teams, finding that it helped him maintain the mental clarity necessary for his job. The other operators often joked about his ability to fall asleep anywhere, but Marcus knew that rest was essential for maintaining peak performance during extended operations. Lieutenant Junior Grade Sarah Kim, the team's intelligence officer, reviewed the mission parameters one final time as they flew toward the target area. Intelligence suggested that the compound housed between 6 and 8 enemy fighters, along with the primary target. The layout of the building would require careful coordination between team members, with Marcus positioned to provide medical support while maintaining visual contact with the assault element. As the helicopter began its descent toward the landing zone, Marcus performed one final equipment check. His rifle was clean and loaded, his medical supplies were organized and easily accessible, and his communications equipment was functioning properly. The team had rehearsed this type of operation countless times, but Marcus knew that real combat situations rarely unfolded exactly as planned. The helicopter touched down in a small clearing surrounded by rocky terrain. The team moved quickly and silently away from the aircraft, which immediately lifted off and disappeared into the night sky. Marcus followed Tank through the darkness, using his night vision goggles to navigate the uneven ground. The patrol to the target compound would take approximately 90 minutes, moving carefully to avoid detection by enemy sentries. During the patrol, Marcus noticed that Petty Officer Second Class Tommy "Ghost" Nakamura seemed more tense than usual. Ghost had joined the team 6 months ago, replacing a corpsman who had been wounded during a previous deployment. The young operator had proven himself capable in combat. But Marcus could sense that something was bothering him tonight. As the senior enlisted member of the team, Marcus made a mental note to check on Ghost after they returned from the mission. The team reached their observation point overlooking the target compound at 2,130 hours. Morrison used his spotting scope to survey the area, counting the visible enemy positions and identifying potential threats. Marcus positioned himself behind a large boulder that would provide both cover and a clear view of the assault route. From this position, he could quickly move to assist any team member who might be wounded during the operation. The compound appeared to match the intelligence reports exactly. A two-story concrete building sat in the center of a walled courtyard, with several smaller structures scattered around the perimeter. Marcus could see 2 guards patrolling the outer walls, carrying AK-47 rifles and moving in a predictable pattern. The main building showed signs of recent activity, with lights visible in several windows, and the sound of voices carrying across the quiet desert air. Morrison gathered the team for a final briefing before beginning the assault. Each operator knew his specific role and responsibilities, but the commander wanted to ensure that everyone understood the updated intelligence and any last-minute changes to the plan. Marcus would enter the compound with the second element, providing medical support and covering the team's rear as they cleared each room systematically. As they prepared to move toward the compound, Marcus felt a strange sensation in his stomach. It was not fear or anxiety. Emotions he had learned to control through years of training and experience. This feeling was different, almost like a premonition that something significant was about to happen. He had experienced similar sensations before, usually just before major events in his life, but tonight the feeling seemed particularly intense. The team moved silently toward the compound wall, using hand signals to communicate as they approached their entry point. Tank prepared his breaching charges, while the other operators took up their assigned positions. Marcus checked his medical bag one final time, ensuring that his most critical supplies were within easy reach. In a few minutes, they would be inside the compound, and there would be no time for second thoughts or equipment adjustments. Morrison gave the signal to begin the assault, and Tank's explosive charges created a precise hole in the concrete wall. The team poured through the opening, moving with the fluid precision that came from months of training together. Marcus followed closely behind Ghost, his rifle raised and ready as they advanced toward the main building. The guards they had observed earlier were nowhere to be seen, suggesting that they had either taken cover inside or fled when they heard the explosions. The first floor of the building was cleared quickly and efficiently, with no sign of the enemy fighters or the primary target. Marcus maintained his position at the base of the stairs leading to the second floor, providing security while the assault element prepared to continue upward. The silence inside the building was unsettling, as intelligence had suggested they would encounter immediate resistance upon entry. As Morrison and Tank began climbing the stairs, Marcus heard a sound that made his blood run cold. It was the distinctive click of a safety being disengaged on an automatic weapon, coming from somewhere behind them on the first floor. The team had missed something during their initial sweep, and now they were potentially trapped between enemy forces on 2 different levels of the building. Marcus immediately moved toward the sound, signaling for Ghost to cover the stairs while he investigated the potential threat. His training had taught him to trust his instincts in combat situations, and every nerve in his body was telling him that danger was approaching fast. As he rounded a corner near what appeared to be a storage room, Marcus came face to face with an enemy fighter who had been hiding behind a stack of supply crates. The engagement lasted only seconds, but it felt like an eternity to Marcus. The enemy fighter raised his weapon, but Marcus was faster, placing 2 precise shots center mass before the man could fire. The sound of gunfire echoed through the building, alerting the rest of the team that contact had been made on the first floor. Marcus quickly checked the fallen fighter for additional weapons or intelligence materials, finding nothing of immediate value. Morrison's voice crackled through Marcus's earpiece, requesting a status report on the first floor engagement. Marcus responded that the threat had been neutralized and the first floor was secure, allowing the assault element to continue their advance to the second floor. The sound of movement and muffled voices from above suggested that the primary target and his associates were attempting to barricade themselves in one of the upper rooms. As the team continued their systematic clearing of the second floor, Marcus maintained his security position at the base of the stairs. His role during building clearance operations was to ensure that no enemy forces could attack the assault element from behind, while remaining ready to provide immediate medical attention if any team member was wounded. The sound of flashbang grenades and controlled bursts of automatic weapons fire indicated that the team had located their targets. Ghost appeared at the top of the stairs, signaling that the building was secure and the primary target had been captured alive. Marcus felt a surge of relief that the mission had been completed without any friendly casualties. As he began to relax slightly, preparing to transition from combat mode to post-operation procedures, Marcus heard Morrison calling for him to join the team on the second floor. The commander's tone suggested that something unusual had been discovered during the capture operation. Marcus climbed the stairs quickly, his medical bag bouncing against his hip as he took the steps two at a time. The second floor of the compound had been transformed into a makeshift command center, with maps, communication equipment, and documents scattered across several tables. Morrison stood near a computer terminal, his expression unreadable as he gestured for Marcus to join him. Tank and the other team members were securing the captured target in the adjacent room, but their voices seemed unusually quiet, given the successful completion of their mission. The primary target turned out to be younger than expected, perhaps in his early 30s, with the soft hands of someone who spent more time planning operations than executing them. As Marcus approached Morrison, he could see that the commander was holding a manila folder filled with photographs and documents. The expression on Morrison's face suggested that whatever he had discovered was both unexpected and deeply troubling. Morrison handed Marcus the folder without saying a word. Inside, Marcus found dozens of photographs showing various individuals in what appeared to be military uniforms, along with detailed biographical information written in both Arabic and English. As Marcus flipped through the images, his hands began to tremble slightly. The photographs were surveillance pictures, the kind used by intelligence organizations to track and identify specific targets. The third photograph in the stack showed a young man in navy dress blues, standing at attention during what appeared to be a graduation ceremony. The man's face was clearly visible, and Marcus recognized him immediately. It was himself, taken during his graduation from Hospital Corps School nearly 4 years ago. Below the photograph was a detailed dossier containing information about Marcus's military service record, his family background, and his deployment history with SEAL Team 7. Marcus stared at the photograph for several long seconds, trying to process what he was seeing. His mind raced through various explanations for how enemy forces could have obtained such detailed information about his military service. The obvious answer was that someone with access to classified personnel records had been providing intelligence to hostile forces. But Marcus could not understand why he would be specifically targeted for surveillance. Morrison watched Marcus's reaction carefully, noting the way the corpsman's face had gone pale and his breathing had become shallow. The commander had served with Marcus for 18 months, and had never seen him display any signs of stress or anxiety, even during the most intense combat situations. The sight of his normally unflappable corpsman showing obvious distress was deeply concerning. The folder contained additional photographs of other team members, including Morrison himself, Tank, and Ghost. Each photograph was accompanied by similar biographical information, suggesting that the enemy had been conducting extensive surveillance on their unit for an extended period of time. Marcus flipped through the remaining documents, finding detailed maps of their compound in Kandahar, duty schedules, and even personal information about team members' families back home. Tank appeared in the doorway, having secured the primary target in flex cuffs, and conducted a preliminary search of his personal effects. The breacher took one look at Marcus's expression and immediately knew that something serious had been discovered. Tank had worked with Marcus long enough to recognize when the corpsman was genuinely troubled about something, which was an extremely rare occurrence. Morrison closed the folder and placed it on the table, then gestured for both Marcus and Tank to step away from the other team members. The commander's expression was grim as he began to explain what they had discovered in the captured documents. Intelligence suggested that someone within their chain of command had been providing detailed information about SEAL Team 7's operations and personnel to enemy forces for several months. The implications of this revelation were staggering. If enemy forces had advanced knowledge of their operations, it could explain several recent incidents where their missions had encountered unexpected resistance or seemed to walk into prepared ambushes. Marcus thought back to the operation outside Helmand Province 3 weeks ago, when they had been attacked by a larger force than intelligence had predicted. At the time, they had attributed the heavy resistance to poor intelligence gathering, but now it seemed possible that the enemy had been expecting them. Marcus felt a growing sense of unease as he considered the personal implications of being specifically targeted for surveillance. His photograph had been among the first in the folder, and his dossier contained more detailed information than most of the other team members. Someone had taken a particular interest in the corpsman's background and activities. Though Marcus could not understand why he would be considered especially valuable as an intelligence target, Morrison instructed Marcus and Tank to continue searching the compound for additional intelligence materials while he questioned the captured target. The commander's tone was professional, but Marcus could detect an underlying tension that suggested Morrison was beginning to suspect that the security breach might involve someone within their immediate unit. The thought that one of their own team members might be providing information to the enemy was almost too disturbing to consider. As Marcus searched through the remaining rooms on the second floor, he tried to think of any recent conversations or interactions that might explain how enemy forces had obtained such detailed information about his background. He had been careful to follow all security protocols regarding communications with family members back home, and he had never discussed operational details with anyone outside the team. The possibility that someone had been monitoring his activities without his knowledge was deeply unsettling. Tank joined Marcus in searching what appeared to be a storage room filled with additional communication equipment and computer hard drives. The breacher worked quietly, but Marcus could sense that Tank was also troubled by the discovery of the surveillance documents. The two men had developed a close friendship during their time together with the team, and Tank's protective instincts were clearly activated by the threat to his teammates' security. As they worked, Marcus noticed that Tank kept glancing at him with an expression of concern mixed with something else that Marcus could not quite identify. It was almost as if Tank knew something about the situation that he was not ready to share. Marcus had learned to trust his instincts about people during his military career, and something about Tank's behavior was triggering his internal warning system. The search of the compound yielded several additional items of interest, including encrypted communication devices and financial records, suggesting that the surveillance operation had been well-funded and professionally organized. Marcus photographed each item using his tactical camera, ensuring that intelligence analysts would have complete documentation of everything they had discovered during the operation. As the team prepared to extract from the compound, Marcus found himself studying the faces of his teammates more carefully than usual. The knowledge that someone with access to classified information had been providing intelligence to enemy forces made it impossible for him to view anyone with complete trust. Even Morrison, whom Marcus had always respected and admired, now seemed like a potential threat. The helicopter extraction went smoothly, with the captured target secured and all intelligence materials properly documented and secured for transport back to their base. During the flight, Marcus sat quietly in his assigned seat, reviewing the events of the evening and trying to make sense of what they had discovered. The folder containing his photograph seemed to burn in his memory, making it impossible to focus on anything else. Back at the compound in Kandahar, the team went through their standard post-operation procedures. Equipment was cleaned and inspected, weapons were secured, and Morrison began preparing his initial mission report for transmission to higher headquarters. Marcus completed his medical equipment inventory, but his mind kept returning to the surveillance photographs and the implications of what they represented. As Marcus prepared to return to his quarters for the night, Morrison approached him with a request to meet privately in the commander's office. The tone of Morrison's voice suggested that this was not a routine debriefing session, and Marcus felt his anxiety level increase as he followed the commander across the compound. Whatever Morrison wanted to discuss, it was clearly related to the intelligence materials they had discovered earlier. Morrison's office was Spartan, containing only the essential furniture and equipment required for his duties as team commander. The walls were decorated with unit photographs and commendations, reminders of the successful operations the team had completed during their deployment. Marcus took a seat across from Morrison's desk, noting that the commander seemed unusually tense and preoccupied. Morrison began by explaining that he had reported the discovery of the surveillance materials to higher headquarters, and that a formal security investigation would be initiated within the next 24 hours. Intelligence analysts would examine all of the captured documents and electronic devices to determine the scope of the security breach and identify the source of the leaked information. Marcus nodded, understanding that such investigations were standard procedure when classified information had been compromised. The commander then shifted the conversation in a direction that Marcus had not expected. Morrison explained that preliminary analysis of the captured documents suggested that the surveillance operation had begun approximately 6 months ago, which corresponded with several personnel changes within their unit and support structure. The timing of the intelligence leaks might provide important clues about the identity of the person responsible for the security breach. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine as he realized what Morrison was implying. 6 months ago was when Ghost had joined their team, replacing the previous corpsman who had been wounded during a previous deployment. The timing of Ghost's arrival and the beginning of the surveillance operation could be more than just coincidental. Though Marcus was reluctant to believe that his fellow corpsman could be involved in treason, Morrison continued by explaining that the investigation would require detailed interviews with all team members, along with comprehensive reviews of their personal communications, financial records, and recent activities. The process would be thorough and potentially invasive, but necessary to identify the source of the security breach and prevent further compromise of classified information. Marcus understood the importance of the investigation, but the thought of having his personal life scrutinized by intelligence analysts was deeply uncomfortable. As the meeting concluded, Morrison made a request that surprised Marcus. The commander asked Marcus to keep their conversation confidential and to avoid discussing the security investigation with other team members until the formal inquiry began. Morrison explained that premature disclosure of the investigation could potentially compromise its effectiveness or allow the responsible person to destroy evidence or flee the area. Marcus agreed to maintain confidentiality, but as he walked back to his quarters, he felt increasingly isolated and suspicious of everyone around him. The knowledge that someone within their organization was providing intelligence to enemy forces made it impossible to trust anyone completely. Even his closest friendships with Tank and other team members now seemed potentially compromised by the need for operational security. The next morning brought new developments that would further complicate the situation. Marcus was awakened before dawn by Morrison, who informed him that additional intelligence had been received overnight that required immediate attention. The captured target had begun cooperating with interrogators and had provided information that could help identify the source of the intelligence leaks within their unit. The interrogation facility was located in a secure section of the compound, surrounded by concrete barriers and armed guards who checked credentials multiple times before allowing access. Marcus followed Morrison through the maze of security checkpoints, his stomach churning with anxiety about what they might discover during the questioning session. The captured target had agreed to provide information in exchange for certain considerations regarding his eventual prosecution and imprisonment. Inside the interrogation room, Marcus was surprised to see Ghost already present, sitting across from the intelligence officer who was conducting the questioning. Ghost's presence had not been mentioned during Morrison's brief explanation of the morning's developments, and Marcus felt a surge of suspicion as he wondered why his fellow corpsman had been included in such a sensitive operation. The intelligence officer, a Navy lieutenant commander named Sarah Mitchell, had arrived from headquarters during the night to take charge of the security investigation. Mitchell had extensive experience in counterintelligence operations and had been specifically requested for this assignment due to the sensitive nature of the suspected security breach. Her reputation for thoroughness and attention to detail had made her both respected and feared throughout the special operations community. Mitchell began the session by explaining that the captured target had provided specific details about how classified information had been obtained and transmitted to enemy forces. According to his statements, the intelligence had been provided by someone with regular access to operational planning sessions and personnel records. The method of transmission involved encrypted communications sent through commercial internet services, making the messages difficult to detect through normal security monitoring. The target claimed that his primary contact within the American forces was someone who had approached him approximately 8 months ago, offering to provide intelligence in exchange for substantial financial compensation. The initial contact had been made through intermediaries, and the target had never met his source face-to-face. All communications had been conducted electronically, using sophisticated encryption methods to avoid detection by security services. Marcus listened carefully as Mitchell described the intelligence-gathering methods, trying to understand how someone within their organization could have gained access to such detailed personal information about team members. The photographs and biographical data found in the captured documents had required access to classified personnel files that should have been restricted to a very limited number of individuals. Ghost appeared uncomfortable throughout the briefing, shifting nervously in his chair and avoiding eye contact with Marcus and Morrison. When Mitchell asked Ghost to describe his knowledge of team security procedures, the young corpsman's responses seemed evasive and incomplete. Marcus had worked with Ghost for 6 months and had never seen him display such obvious signs of stress and anxiety. Mitchell then produced a series of financial records that had been discovered during the search of the compound. The documents showed regular payments totaling several $100,000 that had been made to an offshore bank account over the previous 6 months. The timing and amounts of the payments corresponded exactly with specific intelligence reports that had been transmitted to enemy forces during the same period. The investigation took a dramatic turn when Mitchell revealed that the offshore bank account had been traced to a false identity that used personal information belonging to Ghost's younger brother, who had died in a car accident 2 years earlier. The elaborate financial scheme had been designed to hide the true identity of the person receiving payments for classified information, but sophisticated forensic accounting had eventually uncovered the connection. Ghost's face went pale as Mitchell presented the evidence, and Marcus could see that his fellow corpsman was struggling to maintain his composure. The weight of the accusations and the mounting evidence seemed to be crushing Ghost's ability to continue denying his involvement in the intelligence operation. Morrison watched the proceedings with a mixture of anger and disappointment, realizing that someone he had trusted completely had been betraying the team for months. Mitchell continued her presentation by describing how investigators had discovered encrypted files on Ghost's personal computer that contained copies of classified operational plans and personnel records. The files had been hidden using sophisticated software, but computer forensics experts had been able to recover the data and establish when it had been accessed and transmitted to external recipients. The final piece of evidence was a series of intercepted communications between Ghost and his enemy contacts, in which the corpsman had provided advance warning about several recent operations, including the mission to capture the high-value target the previous night. Ghost's betrayal had potentially put the lives of all team members at risk and had compromised numerous other special operations throughout the region. As the evidence mounted, Ghost finally broke down and confessed to his involvement in the intelligence operation. Through tears and obvious emotional distress, he explained that he had been approached by enemy agents who had threatened to harm his family members back home unless he agreed to provide classified information. The threats had initially seemed empty, but when Ghost's sister had been involved in a suspicious car accident that investigators later determined was deliberate, he had realized that the danger to his family was very real. Ghost described how the psychological pressure of protecting his family while serving with the team had gradually worn down his resistance to the enemy's demands. Each piece of information he provided had seemed relatively minor at the time, but the cumulative effect had given enemy forces detailed intelligence about SEAL Team 7's operations and personnel. The guilt and stress of living a double life had been eating away at Ghost's mental health for months, but he had felt trapped by circumstances beyond his control. Marcus listened to Ghost's confession with a mixture of anger, disappointment, and sympathy. He could understand the impossible position Ghost had been placed in, forced to choose between loyalty to his teammates and the safety of his family members. At the same time, Marcus was furious that Ghost's actions had put all of their lives at risk and had potentially compromised other operations throughout the theater. Morrison remained silent throughout Ghost's confession, but his facial expression revealed the depth of his feelings about the betrayal. As a commander, Morrison had been responsible for the safety and security of his team, and Ghost's actions had violated the trust that was essential for effective special operations. The knowledge that one of his own men had been providing intelligence to enemy forces would haunt Morrison for the rest of his career. Mitchell concluded the interrogation session by explaining the legal procedures that would follow Ghost's confession. The young corpsman would be immediately removed from operational duties and transported back to the United States for court-martial proceedings. The charges would likely include treason, espionage, and endangering the lives of military personnel, potentially resulting in a lengthy prison sentence or even the death penalty. As Ghost was led away by military police, Marcus felt a profound sense of sadness about the destruction of a promising young career and the betrayal of everything the team represented. Ghost had shown great potential as a special operations corpsman, but the pressure of enemy threats had ultimately corrupted his judgment and led him to make choices that would destroy his life and endanger his teammates. The aftermath of Ghost's arrest sent shockwaves throughout the special operations community. Security procedures were immediately revised and strengthened to prevent similar breaches in the future, and all personnel with access to classified information underwent additional background investigations and psychological evaluations. The incident served as a stark reminder that even the most trusted individuals could potentially be compromised by skilled enemy intelligence services. Marcus found himself struggling to process the emotional impact of discovering that a teammate he had trusted and mentored had been betraying the team for months. The knowledge that Ghost had been providing information that could have led to their deaths during previous operations was particularly disturbing. Marcus began questioning his ability to judge character and wondering whether he had missed warning signs that might have prevented the situation. In the weeks that followed, Marcus received counseling to help him deal with the psychological impact of the betrayal. The team psychologist explained that feelings of anger, disappointment, and self-doubt were normal responses to such situations, and that Marcus should not blame himself for failing to detect Ghost's deception. The enemy intelligence operation had been sophisticated and well-planned, designed specifically to avoid detection by security services and team members. The team slowly began to rebuild their trust and cohesion under Morrison's leadership. New security procedures were implemented to reduce the risk of future compromises, and additional training was provided to help team members recognize potential signs of enemy recruitment or coercion. Marcus threw himself into his work, using his dedication to helping his teammates heal from their injuries as a way to process his own emotional wounds. The captured target's cooperation with investigators led to the disruption of several other enemy intelligence networks throughout the region. The information he provided helped security services identify and apprehend other individuals who had been providing classified information to hostile forces. The success of the broader counterintelligence operation helped vindicate the team's dangerous mission and Ghost's eventual exposure. Months later, Marcus received word that Ghost had been convicted of espionage and sentenced to 20 years in military prison. The young Corpsman's family had been placed in protective custody and relocated to ensure their safety from the enemy agents who had originally threatened them. Marcus felt a mixture of justice and sadness at the news, knowing that Ghost's choices had destroyed not only his own life, but had also caused tremendous pain for his innocent family members. The experience fundamentally changed Marcus's approach to his work and his relationships with teammates. While he continued to trust and support his fellow operators, he became more vigilant about potential security threats and more aware of the psychological pressures that could potentially compromise even the most dedicated service members. The lesson of Ghost's betrayal would stay with Marcus throughout the remainder of his military career. SEAL Team 7 continued their deployment and successfully completed numerous additional operations over the following months. Marcus's reputation as a skilled and trustworthy corpsman was never questioned, and his calm professionalism under pressure continued to save lives and support the team's mission success. The team's ability to overcome the betrayal and continue functioning effectively demonstrated the resilience and professionalism that defined elite special operations units. As their deployment neared its end, Marcus reflected on the lessons learned from the difficult experience with Ghost's betrayal. The incident had taught him that trust must be earned and maintained through consistent actions over time, and that even the closest professional relationships could be compromised by external pressures and threats. The knowledge would make him a more effective leader and mentor as he advanced in his military career. The story of Ghost's betrayal became a cautionary tale used in security training programs throughout the special operations community. The case demonstrated how enemy intelligence services could exploit personal vulnerabilities and family relationships to recruit sources within highly secure organizations. The lessons learned from the investigation helped improve security procedures and training programs designed to protect classified information and military personnel. Years later, Marcus would look back on the deployment as a turning point in his understanding of the complexities and dangers of special operations work. The experience had taught him that the greatest threats sometimes came from within, and that maintaining operational security required constant vigilance and attention to the psychological welfare of all team members. The calm he had maintained during the crisis had helped the team survive and ultimately emerge stronger from the ordeal.